I've read some classics, I've read some horror, I've read some contemporary. I haven't read a lot of fantasy. I think I need to change that. Alright, so here's the thing. I haven't read a lot of fantasy books yet. I've basically read the Dark Tower series and Harry Potter series. And now I'm about halfway through the Lord of the Rings. Well, not trilogy, but the 4 books that make up the series. So I'm about halfway through that. I'm hoping to knock that out by the end of the year. So after that, I think I need to get into a lot more fantasy series, starting in 2023. So I've narrowed down the top 10 fantasy series that I want to get to. Probably not all next year, but starting next year. These are the ones I'm going to focus on for the most part, I think. These aren't in any kind of order, but the ones near the end will be the ones that I will probably be reading first. So there's obviously a lot of places to go with fantasy. You can start with the older stuff, start with the newer stuff, do standalones, start with YA stuff. So I don't really have any direction, I just have a lot of series and a couple of standalones that I've heard a lot about that I want to try. I don't have a lot of information about most of these, so these are going to be going by pretty quickly, and I won't have a lot of interesting things to say about most of them, so just another typical video. Anyways, let's get started with number 10. That is the Licanius Trilogy by Islington. James I. This is a trilogy that I've heard a fair amount of talk about on YouTube, but not a whole lot. I think it seems to have kind of a mixed review, a mixed consensus. How do I want to say that? I don't know. It's kind of mixed in people's opinions of it. But it seems interesting, and I like the covers and the titles. The covers have a lot of bold colors and interesting typefaces, so that's basically going to draw me almost every time. Having a nice cover. Titles sound really cool as well. That's basic crap, but that's gonna do it for me, to be honest. I don't know a whole lot about these, obviously, like I mentioned before. I know it's about some kind of magic and maybe some kind of political maneuverings, I don't know. The first one will be The Shadow of What Was Lost, I believe. So I'll probably be checking that out from the library. I did have a chance to buy it on ebook, but I decided against it. Who knows if that will be a regret or not. We'll find out. Anyways, that's enough of that nonsense rambling. Number 9. Number 9 is the Gentleman Bastard Trilogy, or series. Yeah, series, by Scott Lynch. This is the one with the first book being The Lies of Locke Lamora, which honestly sounds like the coolest title in this entire list. So that's going to sell me right there. I know this one also has some mixed opinions on YouTube, but I think the writing style seems to be a strong point in these books. So I'm in favor of that, as I am kind of a fan of prose. This series has published 3 books out of a planned 7, I believe, so it's not finished. I know the characters are kind of thieves or con men or something of the ilk, and it takes place in kind of a more modern-esque setting. From what I've read, so that'll be an interesting take on the fantasy genre when I get to it. Number 8 is The Legend of Droust by R.A. Salvatore. This is a series that has 38 books, which I may or may not read all of. I think they are broken down into trilogies, so I will probably just read those trilogy by trilogy until I've had enough. This also takes place, I believe, in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, which I have no experience with, so I'll be going in blind. But it does sound interesting. It also has a panther as a animal companion, which sounds awesome to me. It also seems like a really well-regarded series that doesn't get talked about a whole lot. A lot of fantasy and magic and elves and things like that. So I will be looking forward to reading that when I get to it. Number 7 is the Founders Trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. This will be the Foundry side book and the sequels, whatever they're called. Again, these are ones that have amazing looking covers. They look really cool with the line work and the kind of a sci-fi and fantasy blend going on, which I guess kind of ties into the theme of the books, maybe, from what I've read. It's kind of a science and magic mix there. I believe this also centers around a character who is a thief or someone like that. But anyways, I do want to read these sometime very soon. I also want to buy the books because they look awesome. Number 6 is the Dresden Files. This is another series that has a whole lot of books in the series. To be exact, it has 17. Then I think there might be some like novellas and standalone things that are mixed in there as well. This is an urban fantasy series that centers around Harry Dresden, who is kind of a supernatural hunter or something like that, or detective. It takes place in modern day Chicago, I believe. Obviously, this is an urban fantasy, so it's a lot different than most of the fantasy series that you hear about, simply because of the setting. And so it's going to be a very different experience, but one that a lot of people seem to really enjoy, as it comes highly acclaimed. So I will be looking forward to trying that at some point. The next one is actually a series that I have some of the books for, and that is Greenbone Saga, and by Fonda, and I have the first 2 books of these on digital. Again, I would like to buy these physically though, because the covers look really good, so I think they would look very nice on my bookshelf. But I do have the first 2 books digitally, so I could theoretically start these whenever I wanted to. I'm looking forward to this one as well. It seems like a very popular series, very bingeable, I think fast-paced maybe. More of an Asian-inspired theme or setting, and it's kind of a different take on The Godfather. So it revolves around, jade, this important element, or like a jewel or something. Currency, I don't know. But anyways, it's a kind of a fantasy, crime, drama, family, epic saga thing. That's a lot of words. Yeah, that's that one. Moving on to number 4. Number 4 is The 5 Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee. This is a series that is about to be completed. Maybe it's complete already. The 3rd and final book is out sometime at the end of November, which may or may not be already here. I have no idea. It will be completed when I get to reading them, hopefully next year. I am looking forward to these. These are very much maybe grimdark, definitely more traditional fantasy, very much inspired by a lot of works like George R. R. Martin, and I'm guessing Tolkien as well. I don't think I can explain the plot very well, so I'm not going to bother with that. But I know there's a lot of action, and I know these books are very long as well, so it'll be quite interesting to see how I take to them once I finally get around to reading them. Okay, number 3 is the First Law books by Joe Abercrombie. This is a series of 2 trilogies, I think, along with some other various standalone things in there mixed as well. These are kind of intense, very violent fantasy books, I guess, with a lot of violence and a lot of colorful language. But it's kind of in a more European-esque setting, like a lot of traditional fantasies are. Involves, I think, a war between demons and humans or something. I don't know what it's about, but it sounds awesome. A lot of people really like it, and I want to give it a chance as soon as I can. The next one is very similar to the First Law, I think. I always group these 2 together. This one is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. These are also, more traditional fantasy settings. A lot of action, a lot of different characters. I think there's giants and pirates involved in this one somehow. Sounds interesting. Again, the covers here look really nice, so it sells me on them right away. And this is another one of the series that gets high acclaim from anyone who's ever read it. So it's definitely one I want to give a try to. And that leads me to number 1, which is Mistborn, Era 1, technically by Brandon Sanderson, who is probably the most popular and prolific fantasy writer out there today. The Mistborn Trilogy is often cited as one of the best entry points to adult fantasy, so I think it's a good series to get under my belt. Probably very early on. I know they are part of a larger universe called the Cosmere, so there's 2 Mistborn eras, and there's also the Stormlight Archive books later on, and there's a lot of standalones too in the universe. So we'll see how that goes, but I do want to read the first trilogy. Again, epic fantasy. I think Sanderson does a lot of genre mixing, so I think this one's sort of like a heist and fantasy setting or something like that, if I recall correctly from what I've heard. Again, it's one of the most recommended series out there, very well beloved on YouTube and anywhere else where readers seem to gather. So I'm guessing I should like it well enough. So I'm looking forward to getting to that very soon as well. And looky there, that is my entire list. So I went from 10 to 1. So those are 10 series I'm looking forward to diving into. 10 fantasy series I'm looking forward to diving into, starting in 2023 once I finish Lord of the Rings. I know there's a lot more books and fantasy series that I want to read besides these, but I had to narrow it down somehow. There's also some series that I may not ever read, and there's some that I do want to read, but I'm not going to prioritize, just because maybe they're not finished or some other reason. So that would be why they're not on here. More or less, these 10 series will be the ones that I read, that I prioritized reading first. So that's my list. Let me know if you have read any or all of these series, and if you like any or all of them, or if you dislike any or all of them. And let me know which fantasy books you're looking forward to starting in the next year or so. So anyways, that's the end of my video. Thank you for watching, and I haven't read a lot of fantasy yet. I need to get into that. So, that's terribly true.